I realized this week that there really are three main things that I find myself always speaking to myself. And I think that they're very helpful little reminders. So I'm going to share them with you today in the hopes that they will help you too. We need all the little tricks, right? That we have lots of problem solving that we're doing as we're going through our painting process. And any little tips, any little reminders we can give ourselves that are helpful are powerful, and they're going to make our finished art the masterpiece that we're shooting for. So let's jump into the three main things that I'm always saying to myself. The first thing is, are your darks dark enough and are your lights light enough? Of course, with our paintings, there are lots of different values throughout the piece. But if we can be sure that we capture where the darkest darks are and where the lightest lights are, then we will have that dynamic painting that feels like it has a depth and kind of pulls you in, makes your viewer want to come in closer to see it. So from the very beginning of the painting, I'm thinking about the darkest darks and the lightest lights, even as I block in the piece. And of course, as I get to the finishing details of it, that's really where the lightest lights, the lightest highlights finally come in. But I'm always studying it. I'm always looking at the reference picture and making sure that I'm capturing those darkest darks and lightest lights. So I hope that you'll be saying to yourself too, as you're doing your painting, are your darks dark enough and are your lights light enough? The second thing that I find myself always saying is drive your brush. And this really is probably the one that I say the most often. I'm kind of a timid person, just naturally, I'm timid. And I know that that translates into how I work the brush, particularly in the very beginning of my paintings. So when I'm reminding myself to drive the brush, it kind of pulls me back into you're in control. You get to decide how all of these brush strokes are going to come together to make the beautiful art that you're working on. So I can see Mr. Troxel in advanced art standing in front of me saying, drive the brush. Shelly, drive the brush. Um, and that really translates to a lot of different things as I'm painting. So one of the things that I will think about when I remember to drive my brush is to use more of the brush, really to press down the brush onto the belly of the brush, um, using sort of the full length of the bristles that are on whatever brush I'm using. Those confident paint strokes that we can make really add so much to our paintings. If we're too tight in our brush strokes, it can feel uncomfortable. The whole piece can feel tight. So using the full brush, but also how I turn the brush and push the paint around, or what part of the brush that I use. If I am thinking drive the brush, I'm making more confident strokes. I'm really thinking about how I can use this brush to apply the paint to my piece so that it gives me the desired effect. Of course, driving the brush can still pertain to light, whispery strokes. There's certainly a time and place in all of our art where you need a lighter stroke of paint or a lighter pressure on your brush. But saying to yourself, drive the brush is just a good reminder that you're in control. And at the very worst, even if you just hate the brush stroke that you just made, we can fix it in the layers of paint that we are going to be adding. So layers of paint takes us to the third thing that I'm always saying to myself, and that is layers, layers, layers. Our paint has different opacities, and so adding in all of the layers really adds so much interest and again, so much depth to the piece. So many times we can watch an artist paint and it just seems like everything comes together really, really quickly, that they make a couple of brush strokes and voila, it's done and it's perfect. The reality is that the additional layers that we can add are going to add so many different little variations of color and add so much interest to our piece. So whether the layer is a pretty glaze that we put over an area or a little bit of a thicker paint, a brushstroke of paint that really adds sort of some texture to our piece, all of those layers are magic for your painting. The other amazing thing about thinking about layers, even from the very beginning, even from the very first layer, when you realize that you're going to come in and add another layer of paint over the top of this and another layer of paint, potentially, maybe even 3 or 4 more layers of paint, it takes the pressure off of what you're working on right at that moment. You can just focus on getting that layer of color down, getting that section completed, and there's no pressure that it has to be absolutely perfect right at that moment. So layers and understanding that you're going to come back and add as many layers as you need to add to get to the final result that you're looking for really can help you just to relax on the layer that you're on and not stress too much about it. So I hope that you will find some helpful things that you'll say to yourself as you are doing your paintings. Remember, number one is, are your values correct? Are your lights light enough? And are your darks dark enough? Number two, the second point that we talked about is drive your brush. And this is my favorite one. That really helps me so much. And number three is layers, layers, layers. I'm always telling my students in my classes that if you don't like your painting, it just means you're not done yet. Keep painting, keep adding those layers. We can fix anything. If there's something that you just don't like, go in there with another layer. So, what do you say to yourself as you're painting? I'd love for you to leave a comment. Let me know what things you find yourself muttering to yourself over and over. Maybe something that you say to yourself will be helpful to me. And I hope if you like this video that you will subscribe to our channel. I have lots more videos, little helpful, hopefully inspirational things that you can use in your studio. So I hope that you'll subscribe and like this video. And of course, leave me a comment.